do you also notice that a lot of Calvinists seem to be very cold and harsh, presumably because of their harsh worldview, particularly of Romans 9? To be honest with you, when I was a Calvinist, and before I started the broadcast and started debating these things online, I would have said absolutely not. Some of my Calvinist friends are the dearest, sweetest people I know. And I was among the group of Calvinist friends. And like I said, I went to school with Matt Chandler, that most of you would have heard of. And he's a great guy. I mean, godly, loving man of God. And most of the Calvinists I have engaged with in real life, so to speak, when I'm not talking about online controversies, have been kind and loving and sweet and missionally minded and all the things we would hope for in a church. It's one of the reasons I don't cast them out as heretics and follow the advice of many of you, even on the side chat, many days, that are trying to ask me to call them out as heretics and throw them out of the kingdom because of the false views that they hold to. I just see it differently, maybe from my own worldview and my own perspective. And I'm never going to be that kind of person. If you're wanting me to be that kind of person, you probably need to go look for somebody else, because I'm not going to be that kind of person. And so I would just push back and just say that usually people, when you meet them face to face and you truly get to know them, are going to represent themselves in a much better way than oftentimes is done on social media. And that's true of both sides. That's just true of people in general, whether Christian or not, for that matter, because the internet has a way in which you can protect, especially if the person's identity is not being revealed. If a person's using a false identity with some avatar as their picture or whatever else, then you never, I mean, they have anonymity and they can say and do whatever their true sinful selves would like to do with, in other words, you want to take the mask off of somebody and see how they really are, who they really are, see how they act online when they're acting anonymously. It's almost like what my youth pastor used to say: who you are is not who you are at church. Who you are is who you are when no one else is around and watching. That's who you really are. And that's true online as well. Who you really are is who you are when you're acting online and nobody knows your name. That's one of the reasons that I rarely try to engage with people on the side chat who have made up names, because people don't typically act the way they would normally act and say things that would represent the true character of Christ when they're putting out a false identity. Now, I realize there are some people who have legitimate reasons for possibly security concerns, like my brother when he was a missionary in a closed country, why he would not want his name to be on a broadcast like this. So it's a very rare situation, but there are a few who have really good reasons for not wanting to put their identity out there when they post on places like this. But usually when somebody's chatting with a false identity or something like that, then I have to be somewhat skeptical. Why would you want to not put your name next to the words you're willing to say? Are you not willing to be held responsible for your words? I mean, that's, I think, that an important part of that. And so, yeah, Calvinists can be known for being more harsh, though. And I have an episode on this where actually John Piper answers that question. The name of the episode is "Why Are Calvinists So Mean?" Because Calvinists have come across as a little bit more judgmental, maybe a little bit more harsh in these discussions. And to be fair, I mean, I know the feeling, because when I became a Calvinist at 19, the cage stage, what they were talking about, the cage stage, you kind of have this feeling like these doctrines have been hidden from me. You almost feel like I've been kind of sold a bill of goods here. Nobody's ever told me about this election stuff, this sovereignty stuff. And here it is in Romans 9, plain as day, because I learned it from a Calvinistic perspective. It seems as plain as day that it's teaching Calvinism now that I've been taught by John MacArthur that this is what Calvinism is, and I've never been taught anything else at the age of 19. And so I just swallowed this whole doctrine hook, line, and sinker. And I'm thinking, why didn't my pastor or my youth pastor or my Sunday school teachers ever teach me this for the last 19 years that I've grown up in church? And so you kind of get this little bit an anger kind of thing coming up, and you kind of go, why do they hide this stuff from me? And you also get this feeling of, well, it's kind of now my job to make sure everybody knows about it, because it's not being taught the way it should be. And so you start talking about it all the time. You almost become like an evangelist for Calvinism. And then people start to call you a heretic or ridicule your beliefs. And maybe rightly so. They're pretty bad beliefs. Of course, I think that now, but I didn't think so then. And so now I feel like a martyr of sorts. I'm just trying to stand upon the sovereignty of God's grace and goodness and teach the doctrines of men like Charles Spurgeon. And you guys are condemning me as a heretic. How dare you? And this infuses this kind of righteous indignation of how dare you talk back to God? And so it comes across as an arrogance and maybe even a vitriol from Calvinists, especially in an online kind of discourse, because they feel like they've been kind of backed in the corner and they're being surrounded by people calling them all kinds of names. I know, I've been there. I know what it feels like. That's one of the reasons I don't take that approach. It's not very helpful. It's not going to win anybody out of Calvinism for sure. And so be gracious with the Calvinists you come across that come across as harsh or cold, and maybe even mean. Sometimes it's better just to distance yourself from them and warn them a few times, try to engage them cordially. And if they're just not going to come along, then it may be better just to leave the discussion altogether, or try to meet with them in person. I've done that several times where I'll just say, hey, you want to talk on the phone or something like that? And immediately the demeanor changes when they get on the phone with you. And so what I would say is have grace with them and just think to yourself, maybe this guy will be like a future Leighton Flowers or Warren McGrew or, the host of other guys that we've had on the show who have now converted out of Calvinism, who were used to be cage-stayed, mean, harsh Calvinists at one time, who are now not. And think maybe I can be the beacon in their lives of showing them grace and mercy, even though I disagree with them on this particular point, and try to be that person that's a marker in their lives they look back on one day when they convert out of Calvinism, whether it's in heaven or now. It's going to happen eventually. We all know that, of course. But when they do convert out of Calvinism, be that beacon that they think back on to think, that guy showed me grace. That guy showed me what it meant to be gracious to somebody and loving towards people, even though they disagreed with them. Try to be that kind of representation of God to them.